HCAM TV thanks you for watching this presentation. We'd love for you to become a member and use your creativity at our station. Please visit hinghammedia.org or call us at 781-836-5094 if you'd like to learn more.
Good morning. Welcome. Thank you. That felt very, that was a little too calm a response for me. Thank you all for coming, as always. This is my 14th annual. But I know, it's weird. I've been here almost 19 years, so I got a late start. But the great books you may have missed talk for 2016. For those of you I haven't met, and some of the first people here I don't recognize, which is great, so thank you all for coming new. My name is Peter Thornell. I'm the Collection Development Librarian here at the library. I'm always grateful that people are still interested in trying to find books to read and willing to spend an hour of their time listening to me babble on. I have a nice selection of books today, hopefully some that you haven't read yet, hopefully some you've never even heard of, which is always my goal. I should say, as I always do, that I compile the list by going through lots of different best of the year lists from all kinds of different sources, winnow out all the books that I know everyone's heard of, and then read or heavily peruse all that's left and boil it down to, a dozen or so that I want to talk about. Again, I'm always appreciative everyone comes out, and I'm always nervous, not about talking, but about whether or not you've read the books or going to like the books, whatever. So no more preamble, let me get right to it. My first book is the big book of the day. There's always one big quasi-epic. And it's called The Nix by Nathan Hill. I usually have a fair number of debut novels on the list, and this is one of them. Hill has written a bunch of, as most debut novelists go, they typically write a lot of short stories or essays before they do the novel, and this is the same thing with Hill. But there was a tremendous review about this one in the New York Times August, I guess, and they compared him to Donna Tartt, Michael Chabon, John Irving, among others. John Irving was then asked about it and compared him to Dickens, which tells you that he's kind of on the right track. The crux of the novel is, it's Chicago, 2011, and there's a college professor, somewhat failed writer, named Samuel Anderson, which is a great name. There's a few great names today. When he was a child, his mother abandoned him and his father, and he never heard from her again. The prologue of the book sets all that up in a few paragraphs. They're just perfect way to start a book. I'm a sucker for, I get overexcited about things like reading and books and stuff, so you'll notice if I get a little too animated sometimes. It's just, it's why I do this. So he never hears from this woman until one day this fairly crazy seeming woman appears on television, throwing rocks and yelling at the governor of Wyoming, of all things. A man who has aspirations for the White House, which is why he's kind of center of attention. The woman, unsurprisingly, is Samuel's mother, and this strange incident quickly becomes kind of a national firestorm and draws Samuel back into her orbit. He actually, the character, had a contract, and I'm apologizing right now that I'm really hot for some reason. Is it hot in here, or is it just me? Because I don't do well under heat. Let me open this up. I sweat when it's like 58, so it's bad. I'm going to grab a paper towel. I am hot. Someone who doesn't know me would think it's nerves, and it's really not. It's just heat. All right. Okay. You would think without the hair I wouldn't get that hot. Someone came up the other day and talked to me for 4 minutes till they stopped and went, "Peter?" I'm like, "I've known them as long as you." And I'm like, "Yes, it's me. Thank you very much." Where was I? So Samuel had a contract to write a book that he never wrote, although he took the money for it. So they kind of coerce him to write up a book about this woman, which kind of either forces or enables him to discover her story and the truth behind this phantom from his childhood. I should mention the title of the book, The Nix, which is taken from Norwegian folklore. It's really cool. The phrase is used in the book as to represent something you love that disappears and takes part of your heart with it. It's a really, like I went afterwards and read more about it in the mythological standpoint, and it's a beautiful idea. The book is serious, it's satirical, and the coolest part of the book is while the core of the story is really Samuel and his mother, there's so much more that fills it in, which I think is where comparisons to John Irving or maybe even Tom Wolfe would come in, because he talks about the 60s counterculture and news media and Chicago riots and online gaming and Allen Ginsberg and cultural norms and all these other things. But it's all tied together really perfectly. It's a big book, big experience, and by all rights, the debut of someone who's going to be around for quite a while. So if you're up for a literary ride, this is the one for the day. In last year's talk, I had a great book called Bettyville by George Hodgman, and it was about the author's return to his childhood home in Missouri to care for his mother, who was in her 90s at the time and not doing very well. He expected to stay for a short time, but wound up staying for about 4 years. And that's a terrific book about family and reconciliation and the truths and differences that bind and divide parents and children. And I was not at all surprised when I saw a quote from George Hodgman on the cover of this book, which is Betsy Lerner's The Bridge Ladies. It's easy to summarize, but must be kind of experienced to be fully appreciated. Lerner was raised in New Haven, Connecticut, couldn't wait to break out of New Haven, Connecticut, and lived in New York City for about 20 years until her husband got a job in, of course, New Haven, Connecticut. And she moved back kind of grudgingly, but wound up just a few miles down the road from her mother. And after about 10 years of living there, her mother had hip surgery. And Betsy decided to move in with her for a bit to help her out. While there, one of the constants of her mother's life hit her with a whole new sense of urgency. As a child, Betsy had seen, quote, the Bridge Ladies come and go, their weekly game, and Betsy's avoidance of it, she would always flee the room or the house when they all showed up, was just a fact of her life. But then when she stays with her mother for a while, she sees the women come and go, day after day, checking on her, seeing her. And every Monday at noon, she sees a bridge game that's been going on for 55 years. So the book is not a story of just the mother and daughter reconnecting, but it's a chronicle of the other women in the game and the way friends' lives grow closer and further apart over the years with different incidents and such. One of the best lines of the book is paraphrased on the dust jacket, and it says, where is it here? Quote, impressed by their faithful visits and home-cooked meals, Betsy saw something her own generation lacked. Facebook was great, but it wouldn't deliver a pot roast. I love that line, deeply agree with the sentiment. I'm in a weird place where I'm not on social media stuff like Facebook. I don't have a group of friends like Betsy's mom, so the book struck me particularly close to home. I love being part of this group for a few hours, and I think you'll probably find something very close to home in the pages. Lerner, I should say, has won several awards for poetry, though she's never actually produced a complete book of poems. Her main career, she was a book editor for years, but now she's a literary agent in New York. So from all that, she clearly knows how to put a book together properly and everything. And I love this one. This is a great, great book. I've always got a few books that I'm on the fence about including because I'm worried people will have already read them or heard of them. But there's some that I can't pass up. And this one is a little, actually, I should say this. I always check this because it's interesting. One of the cool things about the library system is that I can look up and see how many times a book has gone out and when we got it and all this other stuff. So a lot of times I'll pick up a book and I'll think no one's ever heard of it, and then I'll glance and it's gone out in Hingham, 75 times. And I'm like, okay, people have read this. You know, it doesn't mean all of you have, but people have read it. And then there'll be other books that I'll look up that I'm guaranteed everyone's read, and it's been read 3 times in 9 months. And so that plays into this a lot too, where it's not just the popular opinion, but for some reason, you know, it could be huge in Weymouth, it could be huge in Cohasset, but for some reason, we missed it. It's really interesting. So this is one I thought was going to have a ton of hits, and it did not. This is Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. She won the National Book Award for Young People's Literature in 2014 for a memoir called Brown Girl Dreaming, which was beautiful. And she has a very long career writing very stylish and intricately written books for children of all ages. This is written for adults, and it's a perfect example of my favorite kind of novel. If you've ever been here before, I talk about a couple things a lot: debut novels and little novels. I love small, little, I don't know, concise little novels. They get right to the point. They tend to be more poetic and elegant in their language, and because they're short, they tend to be free of all the gimmicks that authors typically have to employ to keep a reader interested for 300 pages. They just can cut right to it. It's a very simple story, well told, tender, very real. The plot's very simple in that it focuses on a narrator named August and her 3 best friends, Sylvia, Angela, and Gigi. They're growing up in Brooklyn in the 70s, and the story simply follows the girls and their families and friends as they move from childhood into the early days of adulthood, and all the love and loss and confusion and anticipation that goes along with that. There's not a lot more you have to know about the plot. It's just the writing itself. She's structured this book in an almost poetic way. These little segments. It's just these little passages, which again, I don't know why it's such a. I always love it, but each one is just beautifully written. Like she really, she just chose each little section really purposefully, and the first line of the book might be my favorite line of the year from anything, and I read a lot, I'll tell you. The first line is, "For a long time, my mother wasn't dead yet." And I love it because if you think about it, if you have to look at it more than just hear it, but if it's a marvelous way to start a story because it offers so much about her character, her view on life and her history, and it's a very distinctive statement for someone to make. But it's not a somber book. It's certainly realistic, but it's the way she views the story and the way memory is retelling the story, because memory is what shapes us. Events don't shape us. Our memory of those events is what winds up shaping us. And her writing is just so damn good. So you can take this one home, read it in a sitting, but it's the kind of book that might quietly change what you expect out of a novel. You want a little more next time, because it's a great voice. I'm hoping she continues to write more. Her children's books are wonderful too, but I'm hoping she writes more with at least more adult-centric, because she's wonderful.
Is that her first adult book?
I think it is officially her first adult book. She's written some true children's picture books. She's written some YA books. The Brown Girl Dreaming was a YA book. But YA books, I mean, everybody should be reading YA books. There's no reason you should not be reading YA books. They're so well written. Okay, that one. I'm getting better. Whew, hot. I don't do well in stuffiness. Okay, my next one. I have a few different books today. Every year it feels like I get the standard. There's going to be one little piece of history, one big literary book, one medical-related nonfiction. And this year didn't seem like that. Everything I came up with was a little different, which was happy for me. This is Extreme Makeover by Dan Wells. This is a popular one in-house here at the library, too. I use that a lot as well. Other than the reviews, I talk to people all the time about books, so people around the library have liked this one, too, after I told them to read it. So. They didn't just pick it up on their own, I have to say, but they all liked it. This is a really interesting story. It's a little bit science fiction, but more along the lines of my favorite subset of sci-fi, which is speculative fiction. Not really, it's not robots and aliens. It's just, what if kind of things. So what we have here is a cosmetics company called New N-E-W-Y-E-W. And the chief scientist is named Lyle Fontanelle, which is my other great name of the day. I don't know. That just name, it's just beautiful. It rings, but Fontanelle is a great name. And the book starts off with Lyle talking to the executive staff of the company about his new creation, which is a burn cream that, as usually happens in science and medicine, turns out to be better at something other than what it was intended for. And what he wants to use it for is this amazing anti-wrinkle cream. And what's so amazing about it is that it contains plasmids, which are obviously a real thing. They're genetic structures inside every cell that allow it to replicate on their own. And the cream he designed goes on the skin, gets into the cells, accelerates collagen production, and therefore reduces wrinkles. The only problem with it is that if you're messing around with plasmids, you're messing around with DNA, so you're now doing genetic engineering, which is typically beyond the scope of your average ethical cosmetics company, we hope. The company has seen better days, financially speaking, so they kind of push the ethical issues to the side and worry about legality later. And the problem with the product, because of course there wouldn't be a book if there wasn't a problem with the product, is that it winds up being much better at genetic engineering than they thought. A bit of the original cream was touched by Lyle before it was applied to a bunch of test subjects. And those test subjects, slowly but surely, all begin to transform into clones of Lyle. And you would think this would be a major PR problem for the company, but it's not. They turn it into this new kind of personal transformation product, or as the title, Extreme Makeover. Things move pretty quickly at this point, and obviously, as you can imagine, things don't go as planned, problems happen. But the author's got a great imagination, takes us in some very enjoyable but scarily plausible directions. One of the really neat aspects of the story is that although not everyone becomes clones, but the people that do become clones, they retain their own personalities, which if you scientifically entertain the idea of clones would not be the case. But it's an instrumental element in this story that these people can retain who they are while the physical being changes, but their personality stays the same. Dan has written several other books, all kinds of varieties. He's written some young adult stuff, some suspense stuff, some horror stuff. All of it has been hailed, in its respective genres as being great books. He's clearly got a great imagination, and it's a really fun read. Like I said, nothing in the book is really beyond the realm of possibility, which makes it all the more interesting to people like me. Again, when I would tell people about this, it's one of those books that I like kind of speculative stuff, not really straight up robots and science sci-fi, but interesting things. And the more I told people about it, the more, like a month later, some of them would be like, what's that? Remember that book? That was wild. That was great. Like everybody just really enjoys it, So that's one of my outliers for the day. Okay, this may be my favorite book of the day, certainly one of my favorites of the year. And this is one of those books, and I always have one, that totally deserves to be on the list, regardless of my own thoughts. But there's no way it was not going to be on the list for me. And it's The Wood for the Trees, One Man's Long View of Nature by Richard Fortey. The author was a senior paleontologist at the Natural History Museum in London. And upon his retirement about 6 years ago, he and his wife purchased 4 acres of woodland in Chiltern Hills, Oxfordshire, England. And being the scientist that he is, he decided to make a year-long study of his property. And he went macro and micro. This is a serious thing. It's this elegantly written, beautifully paced history of the region, and an honest-to-goodness, leaf-by-leaf, bug-by-bug account of these 4 acres of property, which is called Grimsdyke Wood. And I have to be honest, it's not that long of a book. I haven't finished it yet because I'm only reading it in like 4 or 5 page parcels, but I've been doing this for months. Like, I love this book. I don't want to stop. And have any of you seen on PBS, every now and again for their Begathons, they show this movie called Alone in the Wilderness? about Dick Proenneke. If you haven't seen it, you have to see it in like a day because you need to see it. Your heart needs to see it. It's about this guy who went to Alaska in 1968 and built a cabin. See, probably everybody's like, oh yeah, you click past it. Don't click past it next time. Go back and watch it again. He built this log cabin and he documented it on this little camera. And for 30 years, he lived there alone and only went back to, I think it was Iowa, once a year for like a few days to visit his brother and his family. And I don't know how many times I've seen that movie and 3 others that feature Dick Proenneke, but that first one might be one of my all-time favorite things, like ever. It just puts me in a very beautiful place. And this book reminded me of that film a lot because it's about one man deep into what he loves, being patient, observant, and respectful of the world around him. You know, it shouldn't be a speedy read. It's informative, but it's beautifully written. I mean, that's the best part about it, is that it's just so well written. All the books that are here, they wouldn't be here if they weren't well written. But he really does talk about all the flowers and the trees and the types they are, and then, as any good historian will, goes off on little tangents about, you know, there's one area that has a falling down castle, so he talks about that for a couple minutes, and then over here, and then, oh look, I see this little, I don't know what it is, it just kills me. And it's just a wonderful opportunity to walk with this man through these thousands of little discoveries and observations he made. If any of you have read Ted Kooser, who was our poet laureate from '04 to '06, his poetry, and mainly his prose, reminded me a lot of this. Really just simple and clear, but so evocative. And it's the perfect combination of kind of studiousness and lyricism. Absolutely love it. It exists at its own pace, and I think if you read it right, if you go into it looking to flip through it, it might not hit you, but if you take your time with it, I'm just ridiculously crazy about that book. I can't even explain exactly why. I don't know why, but I love it. I don't know if any of you, or I know some of you do, but I send an update every 2 weeks on new books. Every alternate week there's on movies and music, but been writing for a couple years now, and so whenever I do the talk, I try to avoid talking about anything that I pushed kind of hard on the update. But sometimes the last couple of years, I find books that I still want to mention a little bit because I just kind of mentioned them. But oftentimes when I make that list, I walk over to the new books that are just out. I mean, they're fresh out of the box. And I'll just glance through and pick, and I just pick them for no reason. And the update's meant to just say, here's what's new. I'm not going to talk about the new James Patterson book ever. I'm going to talk about the new, sorry, not hiding my disdain very well there. He just had 3 books canceled by a publisher. They took him out. They refused. I was so happy. They just need to pull him back a little bit. He's run ramshot over publishing, and he has those little Bookshots books now, the little $3.99.
Yeah.
He's got 2 to 3 books a month now being published, and it just makes me ill. Because they spend money on that instead of other authors. So it's not really about him. It's about the kind of focalizing of publishing. He just needs to go back a little bit. Right. Go back to like 2 books a year, and he'll be great. But 10 is too much for anybody. That was an unexpected tangent. Sorry about that. But I try to pull these neat new books that no one's heard of yet. And one of them was this one, and I still have to talk about it. It's called Lab Girl by Hope Jaron. Have any of you read this one? Oh, 2. Okay, good. Okay, that's not bad. All right. I'm waiting. It hasn't happened yet. 1 year, like 20 hands are going to go up, and I'm just okay. Next, I'll move on to the next book. I can't do it. I love this one for a lot of the same reason that I liked The Wood for the Trees, because the content shares some similarity, but the writing style and approach is totally different. Jaron is the kind of person who I kind of think we should all aspire to be in a way. She has a passion for something, in this case science, plants and trees more specifically. But through a combination of sheer determination, natural ability, intelligence, she has carved out a place in the world where she can do what she truly loves to do while simultaneously, and this is always the hard part, making a quantifiable difference in that field and living, important, with the work she loves. Her father was a scientist, so she was kind of around these things from an early age and was curious. He taught at a college in Minnesota. And her current lab is outside of Honolulu, and she's traveled all over the place to study nature. And what makes this book so special is the way she's able to write about not just science, but her life. It's this nice little, is it called a memoir? I don't think it is. They usually stick a memoir on there because they think it's going to sell an extra 5,000 copies, which it usually does, but it didn't do it in this one. And I've read lots of books about nature that read like textbooks, and you read them to gain the information inside, and that's it. But this one is more of a memoir than a straight nature science book, because it's her passion for what she does that really changes it up. And also the way she writes about her lab partner named Bill, who is like, I don't know, like the laurel to her Hardy. It's this great story. They both went to UC Berkeley and graduated in the same day, but he got his bachelor's the day she got her doctorate. And their friendship is an absolutely vital part of the book, as it is a vital part of her life. And what's interesting in the dynamic is that Hope kind of had everything work out for her. Everything seemed to go where she wanted. And Bill's life only seems to hold it together in the lab, even then, if barely. I mean, it's this really interesting combination of people that I think just had to have found each other. And they have a great relationship, and their connection is mentioned a lot through the book. She talks about her husband and son quite a bit, but Bill's the constant. It's a fascinating book. I haven't said much about the content because I really don't need to. It's just this wonderful look at her work and and there's a couple lines in there about trees and the way they work together. And there's something special about someone that can write about a challenging concept well. To talk about not just nature, but the biology of it and why things do what they do in a really relatable and evocative way. I would love to take a class, by her. I think that's probably the highest praise you can say of someone who's a teacher. Like, I want to go and hear you talk more. So it's a great story, and I think you'll learn a lot too. I learned a lot. Ooh, fiction. Okay, I think I've been away from fiction for a while. No, okay. This is another debut novel. I don't know how I figured out this little pattern of displaying books every year. It's like a tick now. I can't do it without doing it. This is another one I worried about. Have anybody read this? This is called I Let You Go by Claire McIntosh. One, maybe? Okay, good. I'm always stunned that happens. This is kind of an emotional thriller where, by a strange coincidence, talking about Patterson, has a blurb on the cover from Paula Hawkins, author of The Girl on the Train. They put that there for unsubtle reasons, which is funny. You can tell a lot. I mean, the whole judge a book by its cover thing, you can totally judge a book by its cover. Now, at least anyway. And I probably say that every year too. They really, a cover that looks just like, Sophie Kinsella has spawned 9,000 publishers who publish covers of the exact same pastel colored and, drawn covers, and the Patterson thing with the author's name is bigger than the title because the title doesn't matter anymore. You're just going to read the next author's book. I got to stop bashing him. I really. He's not bad. He just doesn't write the books. He just doesn't write the books. Can I just say that one time? Anytime you see a book that says James Patterson and then small print with somebody else, wrote the book. Just know that. That's all. Okay. And they're filming this too. James is going to see this, and I'll get a writ or something. I don't care.
Just a whole hour on authors you want to pounce on. Yeah.
I can do that off the cuff right now, and I'm not going to do it. Yeah, I'm not sure how that would go over. It'd be fun though. This, by the pedigree of the Paula Hawkins thing, is a solid thriller in the kind of contemporary thriller with a twist genre. The basics of the story are this. There's a woman named Jenna Gray who lost her young son right at the beginning in this terrible hit-and-run car accident. And as you would imagine, she has a very difficult time dealing with this. And she winds up moving from Bristol, England, where the book starts, to this little house in Wales to try to start over. And she seems to find a bit of hope in her future, but simply can't get past the loss at first. The other plot line of the novel, because these kind of books always have 2 plot lines, at least, concerns the 2 detectives who are back in Bristol trying to figure out this case. Their names are Ray and Kate, and they've got their work cut out for them because they're having trouble breaking the case, and they've got their own interpersonal dynamics to go with. He's been around for a while, she's up and coming, issues with Ray's home life, there's all these other things, but the 2 plot lines really balance each other nicely. McIntosh, the author, was actually on the police force for about 12 years. So there's a lot of personal experience and history in the story. And since I said at the top, it's a thriller with a twist, there's a million other things I can tell you that I will not tell you, because I've said that a million times. I cannot stand when someone ruins a book for me. So sometimes I say things and people think, oh, I mentioned the son dies. No, it happens in the first page. I have to tell you something to get you in the book, but I don't like talking about plot points too much because I've had too many books ruined for me by someone telling me the plot point they don't realize is the key. And you know, the second paragraph, like, oh, I know where this is going, and you got to put it away. But I really, really want to tell you little things, but I won't. One of the neat things is that in the 2 storylines, Jenna's is in the first person and Ray and Kate's is in the third. So it has this nice counterbalance and this kind of clear demarcation between which story you're reading. Sometimes when you read stories with multiple plot lines, everything's first person. So sometimes it throws you off a little bit, and this is a nice clear line. Several reviews I read, I agree, mention how the detective subplot actually works as kind of a palate cleanser for the other part, because the other part is really emotionally weighty at times, where their part is more, you know, it's a little more procedural, a little, you know, you're working through things and multiple people, so it makes it a little easier to deal with the whole thing. It doesn't have such a, you know, like I said, the emotional stress of the other part. The accident is clearly the catalyst for the story, but it's the lives and the circumstances of the character that make the novel really come alive. And I had some very strong feelings about a couple of the characters, like really strong feelings. Intense dislike in one case. And I like those books because even if they're not the best books in the world, anything that can get you, if you're reading a book and you all of a sudden really dislike it, think about it for a second. Do you dislike the book or do you dislike the character or what's happening? If you dislike what's happening or the character, keep reading because it's working. If you don't like it, if you're like, oh, get rid of it. But if something really gets you, think about it for a second, because people do that a lot. Oh, I don't like this. Well, why not? Did it hit too close to home? Okay, go back and read it again. Maybe you need to go close to home every now and again. You know, visit it a little bit. If it's bad writing, get rid of it. But if it's, you know, if it's affecting you, keep going with it. The Paula Hawkins quote, there clearly is some, you know, girl on the train, that kind of twisty vibe. Also some Kate Atkinson too, who's gifted at intertwining multiple plot lines. But this one, along with Girl on the Train, you know, another debut novel. They both have, I think Claire has her second book just came out, and Paul Hawkins' book is just coming out again soon. In those updates I write, I mention lots of debut authors. And again, I don't intend to. I just wind up pulling things that wind up being debut authors. And it's always nice, I think, to get in on the ground floor, especially if you like someone. Ooh, it's a new voice to follow. And these are great kind of, you know, popcorn novels. You get in, get a few little thrills and gasps, and go back and look for the next one. So,
Hi.
Hey, that's all right. Okay. Most of these titles I pull in right at the end of the year, December, January, when I go through all the lists. But some of them kind of are clear to me as the year goes along that I'm going to include them. And this is one that I added, I want to say April, like right after it came out last year. The handout you have, I've already made next year. There's only a few titles on it, even though we're only 2 months in. Like just possible ideas. So I'm always working on this thing. And this one is Evicted Poverty and Profit in the American City by Matthew Desmond, and it's picked up a lot of notoriety in the last month or two. Some of you may have heard about it or read it. But I really wanted to include it for people who haven't read it because it's one of those books that, you know, it's a topic that you're not gonna, ooh, I want to really go read about people being evicted and poverty. It's not something you're going to pick up. So I really want to mention it because it's clearly one of the most widely praised books of the year. But it's, again, serious and kind of heartbreaking at times enough that people aren't going to necessarily flock to pick it up. Desmond is an associate professor of social sciences at Harvard and won a MacArthur Genius Grant in 2015. So he, you know, we can kind of take it as read that he knows what he's talking about. With this one, he did what all the best researchers and journalists do, I think, when they're writing a book, in that he chose to tell the story of a widespread problem through a handful of focused individuals to make them emblematic of the whole, which obviously gets us more invested. If you're reading about poverty in general, it's academic. When you deal with actual people and incidents, then you really get drawn in. His focus was on Milwaukee in 2008 and 9, some of the poorest sections of the city. And he follows 8 different people to paint a picture of the whole. As you can imagine, many of the poorest families in any environment, urban or rural, are those run by single mothers. And the book opens with, in my mind, the main character of the book, mainly because she was the one that stuck with me the most. And her name is Arlene, and she has 2 sons who are 13 and 5. And the first 3 pages, which kind of opens with her story, really sets the tone for the rest. And I will be honest and say that it can be a tough read because it's his writing and the people he was lucky, I don't know, he just found these certain people that he really get invested very quickly in these people's lives. And I think, you know, in a climate where politics and equality has become more of a conversational point than it has been in recent years, these are good topics to be thinking about. It's called Evicted. He looks at both tenants and landlords because they're both intricately involved in this cycle. And even though there are some landlords who have their, you know, stereotypical give me the money or you're out kind of vibe, there's still a lot of sympathy to be found for them because, again, they're in this cycle where they have to do what they have to do to survive. But and some of them are the stereotypical ones, but certainly not all of them. The book opens with a note from Desmond saying how almost everything in the book he either witnessed himself, recorded, was taken from transcripts. So for someone like me, who I've read too much over the years to take things at kind of face value sometimes. So I like, when it's a journalistic thing, just hearing someone at least say, you know, this is not based on a true story. These are the words. You know, this is what I heard. And at times it's very much like, I thought, like watching a really great PBS documentary where you really get engaged very quickly. I wish I could say I knew what I was going to do with the information I learned. You know, those moments where you read something and you feel very impassioned about it for a bit, and then Tuesday comes. You know, it's one of those. I struggle with that all the time when I read books like this, but it's a really great book. Gave me a very personal perspective on a large issue of poverty. Very powerful book, and I hope you give it a try. I'm going to stay serious for a second because I'm going to get weird after this. One of the other continuing stories of the last few years as far as you know, global issues has been the growing refugee crisis around the globe. There have been lots of really excellent books about this in the last few years, all from a variety of angles. And one of the best books in general and from this past year is City of Thorns by Ben Rollins. Many of the recent books focused on the European issue and all the international fallout from that. But what makes this one so special is that it focuses not just on one country or one region, but on one specific refugee camp. And it happens to be the largest refugee camp in the world, and it's in northern Kenya. It's called Dadaab, D-A-D-A-A-B. And Rollins spent 4 years researching and working there when he was working for Human Rights Watch. And he did this amazing thing that I don't know, I haven't heard many other journalists doing this, which is that when he was done with particular stories about people, and he did a very similar thing to what Desmond did, where he tells this story through maybe 8 or 9 different individual stories. He actually went to the people he wrote about and read everything to them and made sure they were okay with it. Like they had to sign off on things. Did I get this right? Which I don't, some people must do it, but I don't think they really say they do it. And so, again, certain things connect me more with certain authors if they do things like that. So, again, he followed a group of people to kind of paint the picture of the whole. Dadaab first opened in '91 as a temporary refuge for Somali refugees. And to call it a tent city at the time was pretty generous. But there are people there now who have been there since it opened. And at this point, there were people there from multiple different countries all over the region who had little choice but to remain in this place. And it's unimaginable, really. The book came out last January, and some of you may have heard possibly that in the last several months, I want to say October, November, Kenya's been trying to close it because there are 400,000 people living there. But the UN and other agencies have managed to keep it open, but I think it's a matter of time at this point. And most people there did come from Somalia, and they would be deported back to Somalia, where life would, if possible, become worse for them. If you want a sense of it, if you go on Google Maps and type in Dadaab, D-A-D-A-A-B, you will see just this picture of this red-orange desert. And you have to zoom in like 10 times to realize there are buildings there because they're so tightly packed that I'm looking at it at the first shot. I'm like, where is it? I kept going in and going in. And there's these huge sections of these buildings they're built from everything from metal to plastic to mud to these cloth huts and everything. And you should see it, even if you don't read the book. You should see it. It's a sobering experience, but very informational knowledge. I'm glad I have, so I highly recommend it. But
spell it again.
yeah, it's D-A-D-A-A-B. Yeah, it's a good book. I say that a lot. I should just take it as read that if I'm mentioning it, I think it's a good book, but it's a tick. I have to keep doing it. Now we're on to the strange stuff. Okay, not strange, but a little more outside the box. For you, not for me. So I've always got a few outliers. I mentioned before. This is one of them. This is Sleeping Giants by Sylvain Nouvel, who is based in Montreal. It's his first novel. I don't know if any of you, one of our library staff members named Jill Blair, she's the head of technical services now. She used to work circulation for years, but she loved this book too. And sometimes I use Jill. She's a great bellwether when I'm trying to figure out if books would work kind of for, I know what I like, but I have a very kind of particular weird little head, so I don't know if everybody else is going to like the books I like. And she loved it, and we both agreed that a lot of people, certainly not everybody, would really like this book. I think if you liked The Martian, Andy Weir's The Martian, you'd like this because it's sci-fi, but it's not about aliens and space so much. It's about people and incidents. Although that obviously wasn't space, it's called The Martian. But this story starts off in South Dakota with a young girl named Rose riding her bike, and excuse me, she takes a ride. Apologizing for you too. I got a lavalier on. I think I just coughed into your ear. Sorry. Takes a ride, stops near some woods, gets out and walks around, and suddenly falls into this huge sinkhole. The ground just drops out from underneath her. She wakes up a few hours later, and she can see up above these people trying to help her get out. A little while later, she is pulled out of the hole, and she's shown a picture of herself at the bottom of this hole. And the trick of it is, the picture shows this little girl lying on her back in the palm of this giant metal hand. Cut to 17 years later, and Rose is a physicist who's been brought in to figure out the meaning and purpose of this hand, because when they dug it up, that's all it was. It was just a hand, nothing else. And then another giant metal body part emerges somewhere else in different location, and then the book is off to the races. So yes, it's certainly kind of sci-fi, but it's not aliens and spaceships. Not really. It's about a group of scientists and how they handle this amazing discovery that is both unprecedented and unexpected. But the best part of the story for me, and again, it's a writing thing, is the way it's told. Because it's about a scientific discovery of this mysterious otherworldly object, obviously the military has taken over. So the whole book is structured around these kind of back and forth interviews and log entries. And again, for some reason, like the smaller books, I just love the style of reading the question, then you read somebody's response to it. I don't know why. I don't know if it's, I hear it in my head differently. It's almost like reading a play sometimes for me. It gets me engaged more. And also when you get to like the title page, it says book 1 of, and that gets me excited too, because if I like it, then there's more to come. And the second one is actually due out in a few days, and I think Jill and I are fighting over that in the holds list right now. I buy them, but she catalogs them, so she kind of trumps me on that one. She gets it in her hands first, so I think she's got it. But you know, it might be a little left of center for some of you, but it's lots and lots of fun. I don't know how many more he's going to do, because I don't know. I'm excited. I like series; they're fun. But it's definitely well written, and again, I love the structure of the interview structure. I love if I read biographies, I love oral biographies, where it's different people talking instead of just one narrative voice the whole way through. There's a great one about Truman Capote that George Plimpton edited, that is just all these different people talking about it, and I love. There's something about that, the idea of different voices coming in to create the whole. I don't know why it resonates so much for me, but I should stop and think about that, because I love it, and I've always loved it. I don't know why I love it. I should just let that be. I shouldn't worry about answering everything, but I am a librarian, so I have to catalog things. It's been a while since I've had a young adult book on the list. I think the last one was actually the big obvious one of The Fault in Our Stars, which was 2012, which is 4 years ago, which seems forever. But this was a late ad. It was released in November, and it's called The Sun Is Also a Star by Nicola Yoon, sorry. It is a love story, which is great. It's a great love story, culturally relevant, beautifully and realistically told. And I mentioned before about young adult literature. I think it's absolutely necessary for anybody of any age to occasionally read books about teenagers. It puts you in a complete, we've all been there, but it's just a thing that you forget how open and raw and necessary certain decisions seem once you're 20, 30, 40 years past that. Our young adult librarian, Megan McCusker, when I told her I wanted to add this book, she insisted I use the words dreamy and amazing as many times as possible. That may be the only time I'll use it, but she's not wrong. She's not wrong. The story is very simple in a way. And I don't know if you've ever seen the movie, I compare lots of things. I've said it before, if you've ever seen or do this. There's a film series by Richard Linklater called Before Sunrise, or there's another Before Sunset. And it's a similar kind of a thing. It's about two people who meet out of the blue and kind of spend this very intense day together. And it reminded me of that right away. And in this book here we have Natasha and Daniel. And Natasha loves science, is very practical and driven, and she's roaming New York City on this day, desperately trying to find some way to help her situation, because her family is a day or even hours away, I think, from being deported back to Jamaica because her father was discovered to be an undocumented immigrant. Daniel's family is from South Korea originally, and he's battling his role as, dutiful son. He's gonna go to Yale, become a doctor and all that stuff, and he's looking for something much more kind of poetic and beautiful out of his life. Now, I'm clearly not going to tell you what happens to them, other than to say the story plays out in multiple voices through fairly short chapters, mostly featuring Daniel and Natasha, so you hear each of their individual voices. But Yoon adds these really great little interstitial chapters that just give everything a little more color. And I think it's so good because it's kind of a perfect combination between, kind of an oft-told tale and a timely approach to a love story that makes it really special. Yoon herself grew up in Jamaica and Brooklyn. Her husband is Korean American, so her sense of place and the voices in these people is clearly, influenced by her life. And again, the interstitial chapters are so good. There's only a few, but they give this real, like a moment to breathe from the story sometimes, or this little divert our attention. One of the early ones, Natasha's going in to talk to someone at immigration, and the person checking her bag through security, they have this weird little moment, and then the next 2 pages are that security woman, just what was in her head, completely separate from what the other. But there's just, I don't know why. It's a lovely little way. It's very cinematic to me, and I'm 95% sure they'll make a movie out of this. But the chapters are just wonderful, and again, a great storytelling choice. It's just, you're pulling for the characters from page 1, and I think the characters will resonate with anybody regardless of age. So another book. Love this book. Okay, here's my big outlier. You think the robot one was an outlier. This one is my big outlier. It's called A Head Full of Ghosts by Paul Tremblay. I actually knew Paul when I was a junior in high school, as we both attended the Breadloaf Young Writers Conference back in '88. We were juniors, and shared a room with 2 other kind of idealistic young writers. Had fun. And this is his 5th novel. It's psychological suspense, almost horror story, right out of the mold of like The Exorcist or Shirley Jackson books. And the story is about a New England family named the Barretts, and especially their 14-year-old daughter Marjorie, and her younger sister Meredith, or Mary. The story has kind of a classic Exorcist kind of basis, as Marjorie is a young girl who begins to exhibit some extreme and odd behavior. And after ruling out all the hoped-for presumed possibilities and trying different medications and such, the family is convinced to try an exorcism. But where Tremblay adds a contemporary touch is that one of the people involved in the process contacts a television company to see if they can make a reality show around this issue. And the dad, the family's in pretty dire straits. The dad's been out of work for a while, has kind of recently become almost fanatically Catholic in recent months. His family has not gone along with that, but because of these money issues and everything else, they agree to let them film it. And the process of that and the reaction to people in town and everything else makes up a part of this book and has a serious impact on the family. But it's not even really the key to the story, because the way we're introduced to the story is it starts off 15 years later with a writer interviewing Mary, the younger sister, about what happened for a new book. And what follows in her retelling is a story of tragedy and memory versus reality, and some straight up little horror sequences that are great, and a nicely handled look at mental illness and how it's handled or not handled by families and society as a whole. But I have to say, when I first thought about adding this book, knowing it was outside the box by a bit, I should say it won the Mass Book Awards for Best Fiction for last year, over some other very traditional, literary fiction, which I was happy about for him. And I thought to myself, how many people who come to this talk would actually read a horror novel? I don't know. But it did win that award. It won tremendous awards, and I really wanted to mention it because it's not horror like, it's really hard to write horror books that are well. And I've read a bunch over the years from classic things like Dracula and Exorcist to Shirley Jackson, The Haunting of Hill House, or We've Always Lived in the Castle, all the early Stephen King such. But it takes a really strong writer to create a space where readers can invest themselves in a story enough to be a little shocked when something kind of creepy happens. It's easy to do it on film. It's hard to do it on the page. And a really good horror novel is only scary about 10% of the time. The other 90% is all anticipation of or coming down from whatever just happens. And it's a really fun ride. And I was very happy when it won the Mass Book Award because it kind of justified my putting it on the list, because those lists are meant to appeal to absolutely everyone in the state as far as reading habits go. He's also, Paul, written a mystery series we have here too that started with a book called The Little Sleep, which came out in 2010-09. He's a really strong writer, just sold the rights to this for like $3-4 million, so he's doing just fine right now. Looking to be very famous and write more books, I hope. But it's a neat book. Okay, 2 more left here. One sec. A couple of the books I mentioned today, especially several, feature single women in one capacity or another. And one of the best reviewed nonfiction books of last year happens to be exclusively about single women. And it's called All the Single Ladies. And every time I say it, I can't help singing that line of the song. We had a whole thing upstairs the other day where we were talking about it, and it was like this weird little, what do they call those? What do they call that thing? They don't do it anymore. The little flash. Someone say the flash mob? Yeah. There were like 3 of us up there, and I swear, if someone had filmed it, it was sad. It just became this little dance scene for like probably 40 seconds, but it was lots of fun. But it was all based on All the Single Ladies. So it's called All the Single Ladies, Unmarried Women and the Rise of an Independent Nation by Rebecca Traister. Traister writes for New York Magazine, and has contributed to just about every major publication newspaper you've ever heard of in the last maybe decade. And what makes this so good, I think for the talk in general as well, is that I think it was a really good companion to books like Evicted, because it focuses on the tremendous social change that has been created by either individual or organized single women since, primarily since the 60s is her take on the book. Though she does talk about earlier issues of suffrage and labor movements and higher education for women and such. But one of the underlying themes of the book is the change in marriage habits over the last 50 years, where in 1960, about 60% of Americans were married by the age of 29. Now it's about 20% of Americans are married by the age of 29. And she follows the way the decisions of contemporary women regarding marriage and children and career choices and sexual orientation and all other issues are impacting not just American women, but society and culture as a whole. Clearly it's a very well-written book, very engaging. But I really kept coming back to it being a very interesting counterpoint to books like Evicted, because even though Traister does talk about kind of all women, she does focus on women who have been fortunate enough to have the decisions about their lives pretty much remain their own. She obviously deals with some women who have been raised in or deal with less advantageous circumstances, but that's not the focus of her book, nor does it have to be. It's a deeply researched, considered portrait of the role women are playing in the ever-changing culture of society, North America, America particularly. And it's more of a supporting document for what women can accomplish both for society and themselves by kind of not, I think her point is not rushing into marriage the way it was done 50 years ago. I mean, she herself, she's married with 2 children, but didn't do that until she was in her late 30s. And so overall, it's a great history and discussion of the evolving strength of single women in the country. But it's also a great book to read for younger women as kind of a template for decisions they might be making soon, whatever they want to choose. But it's a really good counterpoint, again, to Evicted, where everyone in this kind of, they came from backgrounds that allowed them to make certain decisions that forwarded them forward. And Evicted talks about people that didn't have those options. So it's this nice bookended thing that I wound up reading them back to back. And you don't have to read them as a set, but they work nicely as a set. My last book of the day, and as I mentioned before with Another Brooklyn, I have this deep and abiding fondness for small books, little books. I'm thinking of people like Lily Tuck and Howard Norman to an extent. Another one that I already put on next year's talk. And this fits right in with other beautifully short little novels, though it's not really a novel, but it's not really a story collection either. The author described it as stories, but it's not advertised as stories or even discussed as such because it's Irish, put it that way. So it can be whatever it wants to be. She's an Irish author. It's whatever she imagines it to be. But it's Pond by Claire Louise Bennett. And again, debut book. She's written several stories and essays and such. But it's her first book, and certainly a bit of the Irish poet in her, as it is just a beautiful, mesmerizing book that puts its overall picture together in pieces, but not necessarily using all the pieces, which is interesting. It's almost this collage type structure where you feel more conscious of the feeling of the moment rather than the typical description of the moment where you would get in most narrative books, if that makes sense to you. So with my other small book, Another Brooklyn, where that is a very clear, clean plot line, Pond is anything but. It's like learning about a person by reading a dozen letters they wrote, but not necessarily letters written to the same person or about the same topic. It's this very interesting book that I absolutely loved. And there's no real plot. It's more of like a chronicle of the life of an unnamed woman in a small town, village really. She's a bit eccentric, but she's clearly intelligent and well-spoken. It's in the first person, obviously. And because I'm a bit of a loner myself by nature, I understand her kind of rhapsodizing about the little quotidian aspects of life when nobody else is around, which I usually do out loud, unfortunately, but it's just what happens. But I really connected with that aspect of the book. There's this one section that is so great where she's talking about throwing a party, a low-key party because she's a little odd and eccentric, but she wants to throw a party because she realizes she has so many great glasses that she could use. And she has so many nice places people could sit. And then she goes into this, and this ottoman, there's this one ottoman that kind of features as like, but I have the ottoman, I have to have a party for the ottoman. And then she goes into this great detail about how the party will go, and what she might ask people to bring, and who will sit where, and which man will sit on the ottoman, even though he's not really the man she hoped would sit on the ottoman. And all this stuff, and how, as all parties will, it'll be disappointing in the end. And the catch of the section, and the whole truth of it, and it's probably 6 or 7 pages, is that I'm pretty sure the party never actually happens. I'm pretty sure that she, and you can't really be sure, but it really reads like she imagines it, throws it, cleans up after it, all in her head, which sometimes might be the best way to do these things, but it's just this great accomplishment of the book. I just really, really loved it. I love short stories too, but it felt very much of a whole, but again, it has this little, it's not like the other one, these small chapters. Some of the chapters are 20 pages long, or more. But there's just something about the structure of the book, and I don't know what it is about the Irish author thing, but there is a certain lyricism to a non-American view of life that is wonderful, and this is a great one. Does that mean I'm done? The beep? Am I over? It was well timed, though. So again, it's her first book. It's a very unique take on storytelling. I think you should definitely give it a shot. Yeah, and that's it on the beeper. As always, Truly, truly thank you all for coming, especially people that I see every year. It makes me very happy that people come back. Even Fran and Vicky told me they were going to leave. They came in early and said, listen, please don't be offended. We have to leave. So I hope that you find a book or two or three you enjoy, or that friends or spouses will enjoy. I'm not around on the downstairs as much as I used to be, but I am around. So if you see me or other librarians at the reference desk, and you want to talk about books you love, books you didn't love, books you couldn't stand, whatever, we're all up for that. If you see me, don't hesitate to pull me aside and tell me about something that you loved on your own, or if you had strong feelings, pro or con, for one of these books, because I always want to know. Sorry I was a little stuffy at the first part, but as always, it has been a pleasure, and have a great day. Thank you very much.